Jesus is not interested in just having us tick all the boxes on this list. Jesus is inviting us into a life transformed. So when he hears that, well, hello, Good Shepherd. It's very good to be back. I'll quote Pastor Lauren this week. He said, I am so glad you're back because they are probably sick to death of hearing me preach. And I was like, I don't know about all that. I want to say first and foremost a big thank you for the time that was offered in sabbatical, for the time of rest, for the time of rejuvenation. I told my wife, I'm like, I got to work really hard not to go too fast today. Guys, I'm all pumped. I'm all energized. I haven't had any dew. I try not to caffeinate too much in the morning. I'm kind of a morning person. But yeah, if you don't know me, I'm Pastor Alex. I'm one of the associate pastors here at Good Shepherd. Been here about 8 years, so I was due for a sabbatical, a little time off. So this summer, I spent some time with my family, and we traveled a bit. I got to go do some camping in the Smokies. I got to go to Florida and see some friends and family. I even got to go to that house that the mouse built in Orlando. You know the one, it's got a castle. It was great. It was lovely, a lovely time to get to change the schedule a bit. You know, it was good. When I came back and I see this reading today, I don't know if you remember, but when we talked last time, for those of you who didn't hear, I suffer from this ailment called FOMO, fear of missing out. I did suffer a little bit during sabbatical of that, and I'll tell you, it was kind of eye-opening, the things that cause FOMO. One, VBS. I knew that was happening. My kids were going to that, and I was like, oh, man, the place is going to be full of songs and stories and activities. I want to go. And then it was like, the picnic's coming. I'm like, oh, man, they're going to be outside running around. I'm like a Labrador retriever. Like, I just want to be outdoors and around, like, little kids and stuff. It's just fun. But in many ways, I got over my FOMO and was able to kind of fall into some more healthy rhythms, I think. Not that being away from a community of faith was great. That was hard. But what I was kind of stepping away from in that time was something you probably are pretty familiar with, and I'll describe it thusly. It's those things that I call are on the list. Do you have a list? It's the things you have to do in a very timely manner. There's some deadlines involved. There are things you can't miss. It's kind of like this impending ticking clock. For me, it's just all the time that I'm considering what's on that list. With kids going back to school, there's that rhythm of, I'm now experiencing, of getting kids to all their activities. But before sabbatical, it was work, kids, family, all those things added up to a list of things I needed to do. Maybe you know about this, especially like if you have a demanding job. If you're at work and you have these coming deadlines, these meetings you have to lead, these solutions you have to manage, perhaps that's on your list. Or maybe you have on your list relational things on the list. Maybe you have loved ones who are in sickness or in need of care, friends, family. Maybe that's made your list. There's car maintenance, there's the home, maybe it's rent or mortgage. There are a lot of things that show up on that list that have to happen at a certain time, and they kind of seem like, okay, how do I manage this? Very normal. But then there's also this nebulous thing, faith. I'm saying this to you because you guys are all here on a Sunday morning. You're like, I'm going to go to worship. That's on the list. I want to go to worship. Maybe you're like me, and if you don't go to worship, you're like, I should have gone to worship. You feel kind of bad or guilty about not going. It's another thing you need to do. Or maybe the pastor, like Pastor Lauren or myself, has said, hey, want to be on a team? And you go, I really should. I'm kind of busy right now. How does that fit in the list? And in sabbatical, the list was moved. I'll say there was a few times I felt kind of aimless at times where I'm like, oh wait, I don't have this ministry, this event, this thing to go to. I have a different list. I have different things to honor, to spend time with. And it was very transformative. And I think it reminds me of this story today where Jesus, I was thinking about this a lot, was Jesus was dealing with, at the time, you guys remember the story I just told you, which is that the Pharisees and the teachers and scribes were struggling with his disciples because they weren't doing something, washing their hands, which is on the list of must-dos. You got to wash your hands. Harvey has heard this many times before. You got to wash your hands. Right? It's just good practice. I don't know if you know this. Kids are gross. That's half the reason I like them. They're fun. They're fun. But in this tradition, there was more than just the practical. There was this religious tradition that came from Exodus, from their time out in the wilderness when they were people wandering. I don't know if you know, but sometimes camping, you come back with that little thin coat of dirt all over you. That's a good thing when you go camping. But think of if you lived out in the wilderness. They didn't have these structures, these homes, this city they call their own. They were wandering people. And one of the really practical, good wisdom laws is wash your hands. Wash your hands. Make sure your food is washed. Make sure it's cared for. Make sure you're not getting sick, because in the wilderness, it's hard sometimes to get better. So really practical advice. And here are the disciples going, and the Pharisees are going, no, that's not our tradition. A tradition that they would have said goes back so long, it defines who we are. Why are they not washing their hands? Jesus is a little frustrated, it seems. He really goes hard, right? He goes like, hypocrites. I don't know if he's in a bad mood or something, but J-Man is troubled by this. And I think it has something to do with the fact that at the heart of this is something we all wrestle with, which is the hypocrisy of doing something with your words, or demonstrative behaviors that look a certain way, like you're part of this group, but really not being here with it. It not being in your heart. Jesus is concerned, it seems, with this idea that faith can be reduced to a list. The life of faith isn't about how you live your whole life. It's how you observe the rules. Observe the list of things. That's troubling for Jesus. The reason it's troubling is because I don't get a vibe from Jesus and his teachings that he's about, all right, guys, here are the rules, do them, and you get into heaven. No, he's talking about a life transformed. Life, he's explaining, is not just a series of lists. There's a quote that I've been moved by for my whole life. It's from one of Pastor Lauren's mentors, and someone I greatly admire, Reverend Dr. Rick Barger. And in his book, A New and Right Spirit, there's somebody coming to his church. He said this was a great experience. They came to his church and they said, hey, we're visiting. We've got all these things going for us. You know, we got good jobs. We got a good house. Our kids are doing real good in school. They've started school at this school. It's a prestigious one. We've got one kid in college, a very nice school. They're going for this degree, big money. And all these things are great. And he goes, awesome. That's great. And they're like, he's like, so what brings you here? And they're like, we're just looking for the icing on the cake. You know, real church to go to on Sundays. And he goes, well, this might not be the church for you. And they were surprised. And you're reading the book, and you're like, that's not how you get people to come to your church? Sending them away? And he goes, I mean this with all care, all love. We, the church, are not the icing on the cake. This is the cake. This is who you are. This is your identity. It's not the ritual observances, as good as they are. It's not the songs you sing, as beautiful as they are. What we're doing here is living a life transformed by the abiding and living word of Jesus Christ. What did Jesus Christ come to bring? He said, I came that you might have life. Not that you might tick all the boxes. You've missed a few boxes, I'm here to tell you. That doesn't happen. In our readings we just had, there's no part where they're like, how do we get to this fullness of life? Where did James is like, do all the things you're supposed to. He says, no, doing all the things you're supposed to isn't it. It's about this life changed, lived, practiced, done in a vibrant way. Jesus is not interested in just having us tick all the boxes on this list. Jesus is inviting us into a life transformed. So when he hears that instruction, like, why don't they wash their hands? He's like, boy, of all the things to be frustrated about. He then goes into all the purity defilements. He's like, there isn't a thing outside that's going to wreck you. I always say it this way. I'm bad enough as I am. I don't need anything informing me to be terrible. I don't need an enemy. I don't need demons. I don't need somebody afflicting me. Although that happens to many people and many times. I'm saying right here, that's enough for me to decide I'm better than my neighbor. My concerns are bigger than theirs. My worries, my needs are greater than theirs. That's bad enough when we confuse that we are God. I don't need something else. I need to hear a word of life and love that tells me that I am a child of God, made in God's image, worthy of respect, and that God is going to use me to change the world around me. That's a beautiful invitation. And it's more than a list. It's a lot more than a list. What sabbatical reminded me is that this community of faith is an opportunity to go deeper. This faith community has the potential not just to give me options to tick all these boxes, but a way to transform me. Not by their programs, not because of all the things we do, but because this reorientation that's offered to put first things first. And I'm given a beloved community to help me sort that out. I am grateful to be back amongst you, Good Shepherd. I am grateful for the community of faith. I hope you are too, that this community of faith is guiding us to something more than just a list of things to do. True abundance is what we're after. That's because Jesus came to the world that we might have it abundantly. True abundant life. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, what do we want our life to be about? What do we want our life to be about? For me, it's hope, it's healing. It's forgiveness, it's mercy, it's to be a gift, to be a person of peace. And I know if I'm going to live into that, I'm going to need to practice that in a community of faith. It's going to need the support of a community on mission. So if you're looking like I am to stop serving the list, to start serving something bigger than tasks, I would invite you, like I'm inviting myself, how do we lean into practicing? Practicing the values we hold to. Practicing beyond just participating and observing. Not just observing, not just attending, but being transformed by a message that means to transform and change us. Because what's being offered, guys, what's being offered by Jesus in this life of faith is not a list. It's no less than life in all its fullness. Full, true abundance is offered. Amen.